And we're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call to order the Planning Advisory Committee meeting for February 3rd, 2025. If there are any provision for disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof, please let me know. And we will turn it over to Warden Ropp for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Marcy. This time I just want to welcome everyone to the first meeting for the advisory committee and thank everyone for your time to take the time to do this. Really appreciate you taking the time out of the day. It is very important to the county for going forward and to our lower tiers as well. So I want to thank everyone for being a part of this. At this time, I think we're going to get an overview from Dirk. Is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So very briefly between Marcy and I, just to give a bit of an overview of the mandate and the objectives of the Planning Advisory Committee. And it really is the purpose of the committee established through County Council is to provide advice to County Council on essentially on matters that relate to the county's official plan and major policy changes. So just to be clear, the Planning Advisory Committee, for those that are watching outside of this room, doesn't look at individual development applications or the details of local planning. It really is a policy guidance committee for County Council. The meetings are held at the direction of the warden. Procedures, and Marcy can go over this in more detail, are conducted in accordance with our guided by the clerk and conducted in accordance with our procedural bylaw. And then if there are any conflicts of interest, as Marcy's already said at this meeting or any future meetings, those would be declared at the start of the meeting. Marcy?
Thanks, Dirk. In terms of procedure, we do follow the county's procedural bylaw. I think many of you are quite familiar with it, having either been on council or previously been on council. But I will send that out maybe after this meeting, just so everyone can refresh themselves. But if there are any questions that come up during this meeting, I'm here, and we'll move through it as we go. So with that, I think we are ready to maybe go around the room and introduce ourselves. And I'm Marcy Ivanich. I'm the Middlesex County Clerk and Manager of Legislative Services, for those I haven't met yet. And maybe I'll pass it over to Dirk next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dirk Vanderwerf with the County Planning Department.
I'm Brian Ropp. I'm the warden for 2025.
I'm Abby Heddle-Jacobs. I'm a planner in the planning department.
John Brennan, I'm a county councilor.
Ian Brebner, citizen appointee, former warden. Brad Richards, a past councilor and past warden, and deputy mayor of Strathclyde in the past.
Jesse Fisher, citizen appointee.
Jim Maudsley, I'm appointed citizens rep, past warden, past county councilor, but three-time warden. Thanks, Brian. And also past mayor of Thames Center. Thank you. And I just want to thank you for the privilege of sitting on this committee.
Sharon McMillan, mayor of Thames Center and member of county council.
Yes, Al Mayhew. I'm mayor of Southwest Middlesex and pleased to sit on the planning committee.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I think the next order of business is the election. And Marcy, are you doing that? Or does it come through this chair?
Sure, I can do it. I didn't know. Oh, we'll just ask for some a nomination from the floor, if there is one.
Nominate John Brennan.
Councillor Brennan, do you accept the nomination?
Do you accept? Yeah. You got to do it on the microphone, I think.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then we'll look for a mover and a seconder that Councillor John Brennan be appointed chair of the Planning Advisory Committee for the remainder of the term of council.
I'll second that.
By Alan Mayhew.
Okay, and all in favor? That's carried. Okay, and I will pass it now over to you, Councillor Brennan, to chair the meeting.
Thank you. Next on the agenda. I believe Abby's gonna take it from.
Let's change positions, John.
We'll carry on with the meeting. Next are the action items, background to the official plan and official plan update. A presentation by Abby. We'll take it from here. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So Dirk and I are actually gonna present this in a group effort. So first and foremost, I'm gonna go over the background to the official plan. Starting out with what is an official plan. So an official plan is a municipal policy document created under the Planning Act that sets out land use policy vision based on long-term goals and objectives. The official plan is essentially council's primary tool for making land use decisions and managing physical change. So, I'm just getting caught up on the slides here. Next slide. Thank you. So this slide just shows the provincial planning framework in Ontario. So we've got our Planning Act, which is the legislation, and then starting out with the provincial policy statement, and then the county official plan, municipal official plans, municipal zoning bylaws, and then your land division, site plan, et cetera. So the county official plan directs and guides land use policy and physical planning on a broad basis by primarily dealing with issues of provincial and county interest. The county official plan recognizes the planning powers and authorities vested in local municipalities and does not set out detailed local policies. The county official plan also provides a policy framework for issues such as settlement areas, agricultural areas, resource management, growth management, the natural environment, and the provision of physical services. Next slide, please. So this slide here just kind of shows the key areas that comprise the county's official plan policy framework. So some of the key topics here are agriculture, economic development, housing, servicing, local planning. Next slide, please. So this slide here depicts the land use schedules that are found in the county official plan. And the smaller images on the side are just some of those sub schedules.
Thank you, Abby. As these slides indicate, the county's official plan was fairly recently updated. It was a project that was called at the time Middlesex 2046, and that was the planning horizon for that document. It was, as I said, a more significant undertaking, ensured consistency with provincial policy statement. There were a number of things that county council had dealt with and had approved over the years prior to that, including a cycling strategy, a new strategic plan, an economic development strategic plan, and just generally updating the entire document for growth for that 2046 planning horizon. In terms of, it was a multi-year project. It culminated in July of 2022 when County Council at that time approved the official plan amendment number 3. It was submitted to the province, and then roughly a year later, it was approved with some modifications by the province. And it's important to note that the county's official plan is subject to approval by the province of Ontario, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. I should have probably said this at the start of the slide. Generally, the committee has operated fairly informally. If there were things that came up during the meeting with the chair's permission, and then we also added in the actual presentation some little question mark signs just to remind us, probably remind myself to stop talking, pause, and kind of provide a window for people to ask questions. So I certainly would be. I know it was a very brief outline. A number of the people in this room were involved in the last county's official plan update, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about sort of the official plan as a general document or the last official plan update.
Does anyone have any questions at this time? Seeing none?
Sorry. So the next slide just are some links for those in the room and those watching to some background information, including the updated provincial planning statement, the county's official plan, and then that Middlesex 2046 project. And at the bottom of, I would highlight that particular page. At the bottom, there are all of the background reports and all of the deliberations of the previous Plan Advisory Committee, and the actions of County Council are all outlined on that website. So I'll hand it back to Abby to talk about this official plan update.
Thank you, Derek. So on January 14th, 2025, County Council directed staff to undertake the update to the official plan in accordance with Section 26 of the Planning Act. And the reason for this is that the official plan should be updated to align with provincial policies, stay current, and meet community needs for the next 30 years. And as Dirk mentioned, we did recently just undergo a multi-year update process to the county's official plan. So this update will be a lot more scoped and focused on the recent provincial changes through the new provincial planning statement. So the county plan acts as a bridge between provincial policy and local municipal official plans by providing guidance to local plans, but at a level of detail reflective of upper tier policies. Updates must be undertaken to ensure legislative requirements are met, but without otherwise disrupting the function of the official plan. As I previously mentioned, we did have a new provincial planning statement released last year, and that came into effect on October 20th of 2024. Next slide, please. So this little infographic here is intended to depict the process of the official plan update, or the proposed process, indicating where we are in that process now, being phase 1. And we'll be quickly moving into phase 2 shortly here. And there's another red question mark. So if any members of the committee have questions.
Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Predictions for the future. How far in the past are they worked out of? Because we had 2 or 3 years of a lot of growth, especially in the smaller municipalities. And I'm skeptical we're going to be seeing that much growth in the next 10 years.
A really good question. I imagine it relates primarily to the projections for population, housing, and employment growth. And, you know, generally we have in the past, and you've been involved in those, Ian, County Council has been involved, where we bring on either in-house originally and then more recently using a consultant. You look back 30 years, and you kind of project forward 20 years. That's sort of been the traditional model. The new provincial planning statement has changed that. The test is now for the county to take the Ministry of Finance projections, which are done at the provincial level, and to apply those to Middlesex County. So we sort of know what the end is that they want us to plan for. And then we have to do the local part to do a couple of things. First of all, the Ministry of Finance projections are for the Census Division, which groups the county in with the City of London. So you can appreciate that makes a significant difference. The city's population is just so large compared to Middlesex counties. The Ministry of Finance projections also don't look at local municipalities. They're only interested again in that Census Division. So we do have a consultant working on this project already, an economist consultant that's helped the county with most recently with development charges and some of that background work. So they're taking the Ministry of Finance numbers. They are looking at how to split that out, the city's portion versus the county's portion of that projected growth, and then look at the 8 local municipalities and how we could best estimate that growth will be divided amongst those municipalities. And it is important also to note that the province now requires us to look at up to 30 years, where traditionally has been a 20-year planning horizon. I think I know we will try to bring the economists before this committee at one of the upcoming meetings, so they can try to talk at more detail, at greater length about this. The longer you look out, the harder it is to guess. You know, I think just in my time here, the last projections, of course, we totally missed that we'd have a worldwide pandemic. And we totally missed just the growth of the last 5 years, frankly. It has been different. What that looks like going forward, we don't yet know, of course. So, but we will have we'll bring them in to talk to the committee at an upcoming meeting.
All right, so the next slide just shows the review topics that staff are proposing for the project to be focused on. These include housing, agriculture, economy, and growth and development. And I will be handing things over to Dirk to talk about housing.
Thank you. So as background, the housing is a significant issue of course, in Middlesex County and everywhere across Ontario and across the country. The county has been working on this issue and recently undertook over the last few years an attainable housing review. And again, on the upcoming slide, there's a link to that section of our website that has all of the background reports that were completed there. Basically, that review, the project vision was that every Middlesex County resident has the opportunity to access the type of housing they need in their community. And the study tried to recognize that, of course, the needs are very different across the county. And the goal, of course, would be to give people options within the various communities. So if you live in Thames Centre, if you live in Dorchester, you've got opportunities in Thames Centre, in Dorchester, instead of having to move to Strathroy or London or some other location. The next slide. The Attainable Housing Review goes into this in much more detail. This is what we call the housing continuum. Everything on the left-hand side, right from homelessness, to the right-hand side is sort of market-based home ownership. The county, through both a couple of departments here, are working on this continuum. But in terms of the official plan and the work that the Planning Advisory Committee would be dealing with, it would primarily be more so on the right-hand side in terms of home ownership. What can be done to make home ownership more affordable? Still market, but different types of homes. Different tenures, different forms, to make it more affordable, including affordable rentals, but not likely getting into the sort of details that you would see on the left-hand side in terms of some of the programs. For instance, the county has a program already for emergency accommodation, and that's sort of separate from the planning documents, if you will. Next slide just again reviews the reports that were done as part of that study, and there is a link at the bottom if people are interested in reading more about that. So in terms of the topics that we would be looking to work with Plan Advisory Committee and ultimately bring forward through an official plan amendment, it would be implementing the recommendations of the Attainable Housing Review. There are some in the background reports that have already been completed. There are recommendations there in general. We have engaged the planning consultant that did that work. It was part of a larger project, but they did have a planner on board. And so she's working on some more details on that. And we expect to have them hopefully at the next meeting of the Plan Advisory Committee to sort of present their initial thoughts, and then for you to ask those questions directly, that sort of housing related questions directly to them. We also have to look at some of the changed wording in the provincial planning statement. And of course, the province has made a number of changes in the last few years under the Housing Action Plan, trying to bring about more affordable housing. And that really is why the PPS was most recently changed, or that's the primary focus of it. So we'll be looking at that. And then in particular, the additional residential unit policies, both in settlement areas and agricultural areas. And this is an area, if you're not familiar with additional residential units, are generally, you have an existing home, you can add up to 2 additional residential units, one within the home as an apartment style, and then you can also have one exterior, like a detached in the backyard or elsewhere on the farm, for instance. Those ARU policies have been subject to, I think, 3 or 4 iterations from the province over the last couple of years. There are some policies already in the county's official plan that reflect the last update and what we thought at the time on it. So we would be revisiting that now. And I think it's great timing. I think our local municipalities have dealt with proposals. Before we were sort of talking about it conceptually, what this might look like. Now, a lot of our municipalities have had the on the ground concrete proposals. Great time to revisit the policies, make sure that we're sort of achieving both what the province wants and then what's appropriate for the sort of scale of our communities, both in the, as I said, in settlement areas and then also in agricultural areas. So at a very high level, Mr. Chair, that is the housing topics that we'd be looking at, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or further discussion on that.
Jesse, go ahead.
I'm new, so some of this has maybe already been talked about. I kind of have 3 questions that are kind of combined. So we're going for 20% of affordable housing. How do we define affordable housing? Like, is that going to be separate from Toronto, or like, is it the same? And then we're doing affordable rentals and affordable ownership in that 20%, like, are they going to be divided equally, or is there a certain percent going to affordable like ownership and a certain percent going to affordable rentals? Or is it just 20% however we get there? Those are my questions.
The question of what is affordable housing is a terrific question. And we all know, everyone talks about what the housing affordability is, but it is really difficult to define. And there's market and just having stuff that's a little bit more affordable. Someone's getting a fire call. There is market where someone, making things like townhouses might be a bit more affordable within a community compared to a single detached dwelling, but may still not be affordable for people of real modest income. And there's that sort of continuum all the way down to deeply affordable, where there are rent supplements and programs that help bring it in. The province has defined affordability a couple of different ways. The current definition, and Abby will help me if I'm wrong, is it relates to market primarily. Do you have that handy?
Just in here.
While Abby searches for that, as I said, the province has played with this definition a few times. I think when you hear it, you'll find that it really is, it's the far right-hand side of that continuum. It's about making things a bit more affordable. It's not about helping people that are in desperate need of accommodation, that are homelessness or that sort of level.
So the definition is, in the case of ownership housing, the least expensive of one, housing for which the purchase price results in annual accommodation costs, which do not exceed 30% of gross annual household income for low and moderate income households. Or two, housing for which the purchase price is at least 10% below the average purchase price of a resale unit in the municipality. And then B, in the case of rental housing, the least expensive of one, a unit for which the rent does not exceed 30% of gross annual household income for low and moderate income households, or two, a unit for which the rent is at or below the average market rent of a unit in the municipality. And I would just note that this definition is in both the new provincial planning statement and the Development Charges Act. So if you wanted to circle back and have a look at that, it is in that document.
So as a general, and again, we'll bring in a housing person to probably who can speak about this at a much greater detail and better than we can. But 10% less than the average is not, in a municipality like Middlesex Center, for instance, where housing prices are relatively high compared to a lot of areas. 10% below is not deeply affordable. It is more affordable, but not. So we will bring in Cassandra to assist us with and talk a bit more about that. The second part of your question about percentages and whatnot, that really, there is room through the official plan to either to address that in a couple of different ways. And I don't want to get ahead of it, but certainly council and planning advisory committee can recommend, and council could choose to do it, could have aspirational goals, could say that we are seeking X and Y in our communities. How that gets translated to an individual application coming in the door to someone that's going to develop a plan of subdivision, and that's the tricky part. But it is up to, there is a place, in my opinion, in planning documents to have those sort of aspirational, those goals that we want for the community. And maybe it's percentages, maybe it's more vaguely worded than that, or it could be more specific. But so that is something that can be certainly examined.
Anyone else? Alan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman John. Dirk, just to put that some imagery to that question the gentleman asked, if you have a $20,000 a year income and your rent is $6,000 a year, and that's $500 a month. And these people, affordability is a concern. The percentage may not be that realistic, and I can assure you that in Middlesex County, I don't think there's many rents at $500 a month, and there's an abundance of people that are in that $20,000 income bracket. So we certainly have to address that in some way.
I'm sorry, through the chair, if I can just, maybe I just add, when we bring in the housing person that's going to talk about planning, if you'd like, we could probably bring in, see if Cindy's available, Cindy Howard. Who's a general manager here at the county who deals with housing programs more on the far left-hand side of that spectrum. I suspect some of the questions and discussion might be more on that part of it. So we'll see if Cindy's available to help with that too.
Any further questions?
Thank you. So moving along, we're going to talk about agriculture now. So agriculture is the predominant land use within the county and an important component of the economy and culture. It is important locally and provincially because of our favorable climate and soils, accessibility to Canadian and US markets, and a diverse agricultural system. So that includes the agricultural operations, supporting businesses, processing operations, etc. So in terms of the agricultural topics to be considered, PPS changes include implementing an agricultural systems approach. So essentially, this is just the idea that in addition to protecting our agricultural lands, we also need to protect agricultural supportive businesses. So those are your processing operations, grain drying establishments, tractor sales establishments, and stuff of that nature, just given that it is supportive of the agricultural economy as a whole. As well as the county council motion that staff be directed to include consideration of agricultural parcel size as part of the OPA. Additional residential units. So as Dirk mentioned, we did get some policy direction in the new provincial planning statement that speaks to additional residential units in agricultural areas. That's a wholly welcome change, given the amount of interest that we've received locally and actually receiving those more concrete applications and actually having staff determine what applicants are looking for. We'll also be looking at our surplus farming, resident surplus to a farming operation policies on farm diversified uses. And I would just note to the committee that we will be engaging with an agricultural consultant to assist with these matters.
Any questions there? Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's more of a comment. I think we have such a demand for growth at this time. But we also have some of the best farmland anywhere in Ontario. And so it is a balancing, and I'm wondering, will we look at how many acres of farmland has been subtracted from farmland in the last 10 years, well, whatever that time is, and the projection of how much the way we're growing we would lose going forward? Is that part of this?
It can be. Yeah, let us look into that. How we would measure that. Both you'd be looking at backwards. So changes that we've undertaken or the amount of development that sort of occurred. And then back to the question earlier, which is about sort of the projected growth, working that into a anticipated land consumption. Of course, it's very dependent on the market. And so we'd have to do some estimations in that, but we could work on that. I would also note that the OFA have done some work and it's province-wide. And maybe we could see how that we could translate that to Middlesex, but where they've taken a look over a fairly long period, Abby, where they've sort of estimated how many acres are consumed in a period of time.
So it was done in partnership with the University of Guelph, and they're actually in the process of updating the numbers from 2019 to 2024 right now. So I would just add that we do submit our data for the purposes of that research, and I would be happy to dig out some of the past work that they've done on that for the committee.
Thank you. Just to follow up, if I may, then I think because it will have an impact on what type of housing we're proposing going forward, right? Not just that single detached housing that we have so much of. I think that has to be part of the conversation.
One of my other hats is I'm an MFA director, and that's always a big concern for us. But I've always concerned me that agricultural zoning is considered a holding zone. Well, somebody else wants to do something else with it, and then it's housing or industrial or whatever. I'm not sure we've got past that thinking. Because like I say, that's what the feeling is. I get that agriculture is just a holding zone. A1H until somebody wants to build some houses on it. And it's not farmland land anymore. And the province hasn't shown any real evidence that they consider it that important either with Wilmot and the battery plant and Elgin. Both. Well, you maybe find better farmland, but you'll have to work at it. Now, I also sympathetic to the fact there is no class 5 land in Middlesex. Unless it's so hilly, you can't do anything with it anyways. But like I say, till we get past that feeling that agriculture is just to use it for that till somebody else comes along with what they think is a better use.
I would only. We will certainly, in terms of MFA, I think an OFA they will be, if I don't know if we have yet or not, but they will be circulated as part of the project. So there'd be an opportunity for that input. And of course, staff are always happy to sit down and have those discussions too, if they want more detail on that. But yeah, let Abby do a little bit of research on sort of those numbers. This may take a little while, but on what that looks like. But Ian, you're absolutely right there. You know, that's one of the blessings of Middlesex County and a curse is that it doesn't matter which way you expand settlement areas, it is prime agricultural land. It's the best land. So, you know, recognizing that there is going to be growth, it's I think incumbent upon us to try to put that growth in the best locations possible, but recognizing that no matter what, it does consume, or agricultural lands would be taken out of production and consumed.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm speaking in my own behalf. I'm not an official MFA position. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through to Dirk, if you could, when the warden asked you a question, you said somebody was looking into that or they were reviewing something. Who was that? I missed up what you said. You said, Brian, the warden asked you a question and you said, well, some group's looking into this. Do you know what group that was or who that was?
I sort of said a couple of things. One, that we could do some math ourselves on what's occurred over the last few years and look at the projections that are being formulated. But Abby mentioned the University of Guelph. I have done some work on this in their rural planning school, I think it is. And Abby, I think, might be a graduate of the program, so it's quite fond of it. But yeah, they have done some sort of longitudinal analysis of agricultural land consumption. And I believe the Ontario Federation of Agriculture based their numbers on that sort of study.
I think I apologize. I missed that.
Thank you, John. In terms of the topic, your agricultural topics to be considered, I'm wondering if any reflection has been on farm gate sales. Our municipality have seen that certain members of the faith community, like the Amish or the Mennonite, they rely very heavily on to supplement their income by farm gate sales, and it's getting quite predominant. That provides a little income on smaller farms. You know, people are selling eggs and baking vegetables, stands, things of that nature. It's also in our economic. I don't see that listed here, that agricultural topics to be considered. Do planning get involved in that, Dirk, in terms of a secondary income from farm gate sales?
It's a good question. And it's one of these ones that I think planning and municipalities, and I'll group the county engineer and transportation into this too, where it's a bit of a continuum. Somebody that has a small shed, for lack of a better term, with eggs and a few things in it, there's that sort of scale. And then sometimes they grow, or sometimes they're established where it's more of a retail business. And so sometimes from a planning perspective, basically municipalities sort of look the other way for those very small scale ones. There is some sort of trigger point where it becomes a retail or more commercial use. The policies now do allow them in general as an on-farm diversified use. And so that one is listed, but it's a good point, is to ensure that when Abby does more research into that, we look at some best practices that other jurisdictions that have similar kind of ag sales. The province sort of puts it in value adding and value retaining processing on the farm. You know, there's something like washing carrots, packaging it on your farm for shipping versus, as I said, that sort of commercial operation where people are coming to your place and purchasing it.
A follow-up on that, you must realize too, that those who endeavor to get into that farm gate business, particularly, as I mentioned, those communities of faith, they have to abide by standards of the Middlesex London Health Unit, you know, stainless steel kitchens, food handling courses. So in order for them to do that, you probably are looking at a feature more than just a shed. And I'm just wondering if, you know, I know our municipality is seeing this. It became a reality in 2024, and we've put you know, significant administrative time into conversations with these communities.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Don't want to get too far ahead of the conversation here, but a couple of things that have come to us in Thames Center, and I'm sure it's going to be applicable to a lot of the other municipalities around the City of London, but the situation of ARUs on farms. I think we've had kicked around conversations with property owners about wanting to build an additional residential unit that's larger in scale than the existing property, and possibly even in different locations. So I guess the concern is you don't want to have the ARU situated too far away from the principal residence, because then you're worried about severances, and that's, or potential of severances. So what I think we're going to be looking for is really clear direction for our own staff to make sure that whenever we're approving an ARU, that the rules are kind of the same. So if it's subordinate to, which is the current language, subordinate to the original structure, that's got to be maintained. So if it's good, if it's set for one, it should be set for the other. So is this something we would look to the county for direction on that when we're making amendments to our own either zoning or bylaw or official plan? And I think the other thing is with the province, I find it a little bit maybe at cross purposes when they talk about boundary expansions. The timing of when you look at those boundary expansions, because to me, it seems that you should use up the land that you've already got designated within your settlement boundaries before you even consider that. But I have a feeling, I know, like in our municipality, there may be a little bit of pressure to look outside our boundaries without having everything filled up in the inside. So there again, clearer direction. So that it's a consistent message, I guess is what I'm saying. Thanks, that's it, I think.
Both are good issues. And I think the ARUs, as I think Abby said earlier, are a good example where now that we've seen some of the people come in and knock on the door with a plan, it helps us better understand how people are going to consider these and probably what the policy should look like. So let us, the PPS did change them a little bit. The Plan Act has been amended again. So we will do some research on what sort of other places are doing. I think we're sort of at the front of this, but certainly there is the opportunity to put policies in the county's official plan. The county's official plan is, generally defers to local official plans for many subject matter, but many subject areas. But in the agricultural policies, it's fairly strong, and that's a key pillar of the county's official plan. So I would suggest that ARU policies could be looked at in a little more specifics for the agricultural areas, and then perhaps left more to local municipalities to deal with for urban areas and what that looks like in Strathroy versus Dorchester, et cetera. Boundary expansions is on our list of areas that the county's official plan should probably provide policy direction. you're right. And I think I'll shortly speak about this, but the provincial policy statement, or planning statement rather, and the Planning Act have been amended, where in the past, municipalities led that process, did municipal comprehensive reviews, looked at sort of good planning principles, how much land is within the settlement area that isn't yet, as was mentioned, that isn't yet developed, what can be serviced, what's the right density, what's the right projections, and then looking forward to how much that's community, how much those settlement areas should expand. The rules have now been changed that individuals can bring forward proposals in the provincial framework, and then municipalities are going to have to evaluate those that are before them. We would hope that we could craft some policies in the county's official plan that would provide some guidance on to how we would deal with those. And importantly, I think ideally that would set it up so that applicants know what they need to do to submit. So it's not just, my opinion, not just coming in the door and asking, yeah, please add this particular property to Thorndale. It would be looking at some of those things like servicing, like justification. What are those existing lands that aren't yet built out in Thorndale, et cetera?
And just one little follow-up, if I may, as well. I've been told too that whenever we're going to be considering some of these things, we have to involve an agricultural impact study. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Look over at Abby. I can't remember if the policy, we'll have to look at that a bit. I don't know if the policies now require an agricultural impact assessment.
In the guideline document that we provided to the local municipalities, it does require that, but it's on an as-needed basis. So essentially, it's up to the discretion of the municipality and local staff as to whether one of those would be required, because we don't have policy direction in our planning documents yet to kind of set out when one would be required.
Okay, through the through our local MP, I was getting the impression that if an application came in and we asked for the agricultural impact study, which I'm pretty sure we would do anyway, then it is up to the municipality then to decide. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm finding some of this stuff just a wee bit fuzzy. So having some clear direction makes the job of counselors much easier. Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to move on with the topic of economy. So Middlesex County economic development activities are focused on 4 key sectors, being agribusiness, manufacturing, small business, and tourism. CBRE Tourism Consulting, in partnership with County Economic Development Planning and the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Gaming, undertook an inventory of tourism assets, review of attractions, and developed guidelines for land use planning. And this essentially focused on 3 opportunities, being glamping, which is like glamorous camping. So your yurt type structures and a little bit above and beyond your traditional tent camping, small hotel or retreat centers, as well as microbreweries. And in terms of the economy related topics that we would be looking to consider through this exercise, the PPS and Planning Act changes pertaining to employment areas. So both of the documents had the definition of employment areas amended to focus on your heavier industrial type activities to be included in employment areas, as opposed to commercial businesses that might support industry a little bit. Like it's very focused on your heavy industrial type uses and the protection of those. So we would be looking to implement policies that speak to that, and that would speak to the conversion of employment areas as well. So we would be looking to implement the land use recommendations of the CBRE tourism toolkit that I just spoke about. Renewable energy, which has been a bit of a hot topic in recent months here and I think everywhere in Ontario. Regional economic opportunities, employment projections, county council strategic plan, and just to note for the committee, the Economic Development Department will be consulted and will assist in any policy recommendations in this regard. Happy to answer any questions.
There, John, I think we got it on. John, I don't think I've ever seen so many people come into our council chambers concerned about the height of a structure. And as you know, material gets more expensive, input costs have risen. There's a shortage of land. Do you consider they're going up in building? Like we are finding we have requests that have higher structures and things of that nature. Is that you can see it in housing, and as land becomes more precious, and again as input costs, we find that investors say it's not economically viable unless we can have it this high. And is that addressed in a planning document, Dirk?
Thank you. It's generally the county's official plan is silent on sort of like there's no numbers like in a zoning bylaw or like some official plans locally would have. It has general guidance, maybe residential would be a good example for increased density. We talked, you know, the committee talked earlier about using less land, and that's one, of course, that's one of the antithesis there is that you build up a little bit higher so that you consume less land. But the county's official plan itself doesn't include that specific sort of direction. That would be either to some degree in a local official plan and then ultimately in your local zoning bylaws. The province has, however, I would just note that they've made a number of changes to the building code, and this is certainly outside of my area of expertise. Number of changes to the building code in recent years that allow, for instance, wood frame construction to be higher and such. And I think municipalities are examining their zoning bylaws to make sure that it sort of is keeping up with the changes in building technology and then the building code changes, frankly.
Yeah, thank you, John, for the follow-up. One other thing, John, if the county are truly going to embrace the agricultural economy as agritourism, we will have to be user-friendly on those off-farm sales. Okay, if you're going to, if I see you have it in here as tourism, and I think planning are going to have to work with municipalities to endeavor to have you know, safe, effective, and profitable off-farm uses. I think it will be important.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I'm next on growth and development. I think everyone in the room knows this, that, you know, it has been an accelerating regional market. You know, the amount of growth that's occurred in the last number of years, both in Middlesex County, the city of London, and in nearby areas, it has been significantly higher than historic. It's one of the fastest growing regions in the country, certainly in Ontario. And with that, of course, comes, you know, terrific opportunities for economic development and growth, but there are also pressures that go with it. And the committee talked earlier about the balancing of agricultural land, for instance. In terms of growth and development related topics, a couple slides forward, please. We do have engaged a consulting economists that are working on the population, housing, and employment projections. As I mentioned earlier, the requirement is now that the county and local municipalities base that on the Ministry of Finance numbers. So that work is underway. Intensification redevelopment policies and targets. This is in part related to the housing matters that we talked about before, but certainly the county's official plan provides some general direction on that. And the 20% number and 15%, there are some aspirational targets in there. And then the topic we just talked about is looking at trying to craft policy direction for those local settlement area boundary expansions now that the municipal comprehensive review is not required. But so in terms of this committee's work, we will look to bring in the economists and have them present the their preliminary projections and findings and answer those detailed questions that you would have at that time as best they could. But though that would be a primary focus of this topic area.
Questions? I just have one for you, Dirk. We keep talking about population growth and how to manage that. Is the county looking at all at getting into economic development lands to have something ready if someone comes knocking at the door that like a battery plant in St. Thomas or something like that? Is the county looking down that road to be prepared if somebody comes talking to Middlesex County and say, we want to bring this size of a plant here? Do we have any plans for handling that?
Through the chair, at present, the county doesn't own industrial parks, for instance, like some areas of Ontario would. Some of our local municipalities do own lands that are available directly. Most of the lands that are available for industrial uses are in private ownership. And so the Economic Development Department does more of a facilitating role to try to make those connections. But we will, on the previous topic, we had committed, we'd like to bring Kara Finn in from the Economic Development Group and talk, and it could probably answer those kind of questions at a greater detail than I could.
Any further questions? Ian, go ahead.
You should include the Chamber of Commerce in that discussion too, because they're I know that Strathroy Chamber of Commerce right now, but I think they're going to be changing and make it Middlesex Chamber of Commerce.
Thanks, Brad. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll carry on.
Thank you. Then through the chair, we got through this faster than I anticipated. So we are at the sort of additional consideration slide. And this is just an opportunity. We thought we'd put a little placeholder in there. The 4 topic areas are things that really Abby and I and others in our department have come up with based on the recent changes. There might be other things we just haven't thought about that you would like more information on or like us to look further or consider. So this would be an opportunity to identify any other areas or questions that could form part of the coming work.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through the Dirk, when you go back a couple slides, and we don't have to go back on them, but when we go back a couple slides, you talked about the growth and the expansion of boundaries. What happens if you want to take some of the boundaries out and put them back to agriculture? I know that politically you get shot by 2 or 3 residents, but other than that, it would allow you to move. And the reason I'm asking this, because a lot of the places, the development is dictated by the services, the closest to the wastewater treatment and the closest to the water supply and so on. And I know that there's areas that were put in years ago in certain municipalities where they won't be touched for a long time because of the prohibitive cost of getting services. But is there anything that allows you to do that to when you're going to readjust it? And I guess it'd be more done at the municipal side than the county side, but it really gives them I'm going to say a better hammer in which to enact that.
You're correct. It is really in the local official plan amendment stage that those lands could be down designated. It does happen. It's not easy. When lands are designated for development and people have made decisions to purchase it or expectations are set once something is designated for development. So it is not easy to down designate it, as we'd say. Although municipalities have done it. Middlesex Center a number of years ago did a rationalization exercise where they looked at, for instance, that a bunch of land was designated in unserviced settlement areas. And the direction the municipality were looking to go was to increase growth in Ilderton and Camoka Kilworth in those areas on full municipal services. So they did do kind of a rationalization where you down designate 20 hectares in one location and add it to another settlement area. It is possible, but it isn't always easy. I suppose the policies that are in the county's official plan could speak to that about looking at moving lands before you add additional lands in.
Well, further to that though, because sooner or later the land's too valuable not to develop. But if you expand the boundaries and make it the when you expand the boundaries, you make it easier for somebody else to obtain these services as opposed to these people who've been waiting for 25 years. You know, I guess there's a balancing act there, whether you expand it or whether you leave it as so that sooner or later you develop within the area you've got and force that to get done as opposed to just blowing it out wider to take Ian's point where it expands into agricultural land. And if it's a municipal decision, that's fine, but I just, I bring it up here because it's been discussed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Dirk, this is a difficult question. And I'm going to the precursor to it is, you know, we have an excellent planning department. I think one of the most offensive words I ever heard directed towards planning, and it's not a 4-letter word, Mr. Chair, so don't worry. I don't share this view, but the applicant said planning are dream busters. And I thought that was it just stopped me in my tracks. And I know that's not the case. We have had the experience of planners out of Middlesex County. Before an applicant goes through the whole process of the work and the expense and the detail, being told no. And I find that we have experienced in the past where we've had planners say, we can't do it that way, but would you consider this? And a resolve is made to that. In the document, I think every municipality at some time or another has had not a disagreement with planning, but felt, you know, we're outside the planning process as a municipality. You know, we'd like to have this, but they're telling us we can't. And I reference, and it's not necessary to go back to it, but page 12 provides a way to evaluate and settle conflicting land uses while meeting local, county, and provincial interests. Now, local, are you referring to the people, local people? I don't see the word municipalities there. And, you know, for lack of better words, you know, if the document might be a little cold and it could warm up a little bit in language to municipalities. But I'll tell you, you know, I'm indebted to some of the past planners who have taken an application and have said, look, before you go any further, this has to be changed because your vision will not be allowed. But this is what you could do. And I find that exceptionally helpful. And it puts a different face on planning. That type of applicant is not going to say you're a dream buster. They're looking at you as a guidance counselor for good planning. And this is why we have to do it. And this is how you could achieve it. So I'm just in conclusion, I'll leave you with that. But you know, I think language is exceptionally important. And I'd gladly receive a response, Dirk, from that those statements.
Through the chair, it's one of the great things with working in Middlesex County is we have large developers. We have, people doing, that do development all over the place and that bring forward large plans of subdivision. But the most of the people that our planners sit across the table from are just a citizen or somebody that is interested in doing something that is, wants to build a home or wants to have their family near them or has a business idea. So that's the fun part, if you will, of the job sometimes is sitting down with people. It's not always easy. There are times when people have ideas that don't meet the framework that councils have put in place through planning documents that planners think are good planning. So we do try to work with proponents. Solutions-based planning is what we call it, where you're trying to find something that fits if possible. There are some times where it just can't. Somebody wants to split a farm into a bunch of residential lots. There are some things that staff just have to give their advice to, and then people can make applications or not. But I think our team and our planners really do try to find a path forward if there is one. But I take the point about language, and it does matter.
Dirk, I like the phraseology, and that was an excellent answer to that concern. And I like solution-based planning. But the words that you have just reiterated, are they in this document? And I would, if I read this document, I think that would, I'd like something in the document to say, look, this is teamwork, and I like the idea of solution-based planning. And if that language could be put, in the document somewhere, I think it would elevate the reputation of planning in the community that I don't want to use that phraseology again, but that we can assist people in achieving their aims and objectives with proper planning credentials being put in place. But I think that teamwork, that solution-based planning, that guidance and consulting is exceptionally important. And for someone to read a planning document that is not a municipal member of governance, it would say, well, you know what, let's go talk to them. It warms up the approach.
Is there anything else from the committee, any further areas or questions they want to bring forward at this time? No, seeing none. Thank you.
Just very briefly, just the last couple items. The next meeting, and I'm not sure if Marcy's online to sort of do this now or whether we do this through email. It was just to canvass the group for a couple. I'd like to ideally set a couple of upcoming meetings, and then we could see. There may be some consultants coming in, so we have to sort of see what their schedules are and try to make that work. The next agenda, we would hope to include housing. And then also have the committee's input on the engagement plan. So we, of course, are going to have public meetings. Probably we're looking at a couple of workshops, a little bit more online presence. And so we'd like to kind of run that by the committee and make sure that your expectations are being met by that proposal.
Sorry, Dirk, what are you looking at? A month, 2 months from now? Like how long a lead time do you need to bring in consultants and that sort of thing?
Yeah, roughly a month. And I don't know if Marcy, if you have dates, otherwise would it be most efficient just to circulate through email?
Yeah, perhaps it'd be best to send a doodle poll with a few dates, if that works at your end, Dirk.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I just over the next day or two, we'll send you an email with a number of maybe dates. If you're able to mark all the ones that you could be available, and then we'll try to make it scheduled. And then we'll reach out to the consultants too.
That sounds good.
Also, Chair Brennan, we just do need a motion to receive that report from Abby and Dirk for information.
Yep, we'll do that. Just Brad has a question first.
I just wondered, was meetings here or in virtual?
It would be up to the chair. Our thought was to do, I know when I talked to the warden before scheduling this one, it was for this first one for sure to be in person. So everyone can kind of meet each other and have coffee at the back perhaps. Sure. And then it would be up to you whether you're comfortable proceeding by Zoom or whether you prefer them in person.
For me, I will be attending here because my internet is so bad that everything cuts in and out. We could possibly do a hybrid model where anybody that wishes to come in to hear can do so, but if someone wishes to go on by Zoom or whatever system we use, we could do that also. So I would think at the very least we would do a hybrid. Is that okay, Marcy? That works for you?
We can definitely accommodate hybrid. I needed that accommodation today, so I think we can extend it to everyone going forward.
Okay, so we'll just back up. for a second and, we'll ask for, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
So just, because I haven't had my calendar here and looking at it, so we're talking about then the first or second week of March, the meeting?
Possibly, yeah.
Somewhere between the, say, the second and the 15th type of thing? Is that what we're?
Yeah, I think what they're planning on doing is sending out a option of dates and then you can click on what you're available for.
Okay. And just on a personal note, I prefer an in-person meeting, but I mean, I think especially when we want to talk about, if we're going to get into the agricultural side of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think, just a second, I think, people be here personally is better, but, some people it's just, not possible. And if they can attend by Zoom, we certainly like to have them here. So Ian, go ahead.
Just, I'm basically not available till the end of March.
Certainly we'll try to accommodate everybody, but if it comes down to the point where we're missing one, then we'll have to proceed. We don't want to drag this out too long. We want to get it on the burner and get it going. So we'll go from there. Any further question? Jim?
Just, I'm asking if you're looking for a motion to receive the report.
Yes, I am.
I'd so move.
Seconded by Brad. Questions? All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence, information, inquiries, next meetings, we're gonna send out a Zoom poll for, or a doodle poll for that, see who's available when, I would assume, or present dates. Is there anything further from anyone? Seeing nothing, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Ian and the warden. All in favor? Thank you.